Thank you, Michael, for sponsoring this. Thank you, everyone, for staying here so late at night, and I very much appreciate that. The late shift here. I think it's very interesting and wonderful that the Tea Party has been a part of sponsoring this event. And I think there's also a lot of significance in that. Part of the whole Tea Party movement and just the movement of Americans has been a return to our roots in order to solve the problems that our country is having today. We are looking back at our Constitution. We are looking back at what the founding fathers of our country wanted for our country and what their intentions were, and we're finding a lot of answers there, limited government, observing the separation of powers, and so on. That has really been a key to for us for diagnosing what's wrong with this country right now and coming up with the solutions that we would like to implement in 2010 and 2012, when, God willing, Obama will no longer be president. I think there's an interesting connection to the topic tonight of Israel's options, because I think in order to understand Israel's options, we should do the same thing: return to Jewish roots, return to biblical roots. Unfortunately, the Jewish people has had a long experience of dealing with tyrants, of dealing with groups that wanted to destroy the entire Jewish people. As we say in the Passover Seder, V'hisha Amda, and each and every generation, they rise up against us to destroy us. And I think it's very helpful to look at what the Jewish response to that and what the Jewish teaching is on that, because it's something that both Israel and America faces. And I should also mention that our American founding fathers read their Bible, and they based a lot of the American legal system that they established in the Constitution on biblical law, including the three-tiered court system and many other aspects. That's a whole other lecture, but they were very aware of what the Bible says, and that came into effect in their consideration of the Constitution. We should make no mistake about what we're dealing with here. We are dealing with people who are committed to Israel and America's total destruction. Iran, its clients, Hamas and Hezbollah, and Fatah, which very few people talk about, that's the Palestinian Authority's governing party, are all committed to the complete destruction of Israel and America. Ahmadinejad and all the other Ayatollahs, Sayed Ayatollah Tabasoli, Rafsanjani, the Hamas and Fatah constitutions said it. Fatah had the opportunity to change its constitution, which still calls for the violent destruction of Israel, last summer at the first Fatah convention that took place in 20 years. Instead, the convention focused on bashing Israel. The Palestinian Authority still does not recognize Israel. A Palestinian children's textbook called Our Country Palestine clearly says it all. This textbook tells the future generation of Palestinian children, quote, "There is no alternative to destroying Israel," end quote. Even coloring books ask Palestinian children to color in pictures of Jews purportedly murdering Arabs to incite hatred of Jews. And yet, Abbas, who was in charge of Fatah and in charge of the Palestinian Authority, was the first person who our president, Obama, called when he got into office.
He made no demands.
That's right. I could go on for a long time to talk about all the problems with the Palestinian Authority. Sermons on the Palestinian Authority control television instruct that the prophet says, "You shall fight the Jews and kill them." The Speaker of the Palestinian Parliament recently pleaded for Allah to kill every Jew and every American to the last one. Palestinian Prime Minister Abbas, again, this is the first person who Obama called when he came into office, on July 7th, just 3 weeks ago, honored the passing of Abu Daoud, who was the mastermind of the Munich Olympics massacre on Palestinian television, and called Daoud's killing of Israeli athletes noble and glorious. By the way, Abbas arranged for the financing of the massacre of the athletes in Munich. I'm not sure if everybody was aware of that. Abbas, and Palestinian television, Also repeatedly honored PFLP founder George Habash, who passed away in 2008. They held three days of mourning when Habash passed away. Habash's specialty was hijacking and blowing up airplanes. He also honored Samir Kuntar, who killed a 4-year-old Israeli girl by repeatedly smashing her head with his rifle butt against a rock in front of her father and then killed the father. Abbas went to especially honor him when Kuntar was released in a prisoner exchange. Abbas and the Palestinian Authority repeatedly honor Dalal Mughrabi, who was a female terrorist and one of the perpetrators of the Tel Aviv Coastal Road massacre, in which 37 Israelis, including 13 children, lost their lives. Many more were injured. Sports teams, girls' schools, computer centers, and town squares are all named after Mughrabi in the Palestinian Authority. I'm not just talking about Hamas, I'm talking about the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian television currently plays a children's video over and over again with angelic-looking Palestinian children singing, quote, "When we die as martyrs, we will go to heaven. My blood is for the sake of Palestine."
Shahadis.
I'm sorry?
Shahadis.
Shahadis, correct.
They have the children say it, recite it.
Correct. And Abbas also calls for the uniting with Hamas in the blood struggle against Israel. It's not going to be a separate entity for long. Yet, despite all this, our president has rewarded the Palestinian Authority and Abbas by upgrading the Palestinian Authority mission to the UN, doubling what we send to the Palestinian Authority. The lady who asked about what we send to Israel, we should be asking, what are we sending to the Palestinian Authority? In the past several years, we've sent them $7 billion of our tax money. A lot of that was instigated by Congressman Ackerman, who I'm running against. I'm the Republican running against him. I'm sorry?
How much of that money comes back to the United States?
I'm sure it's none.
Actually, 500 billion of that goes to Israel because the Palestinians use it to pay for electricity and water.
There's no proof of that. In addition, Obama raised, this year he raised the allocation to the Palestinian Authority to $3 billion. After meeting with Obama has repeatedly said that he is committed to a Palestinian state, and he has not asked anything of the Palestinians. After recently meeting with Obama, Netanyahu and the American Jewish leaders, Netanyahu met across the street with the American Jewish leaders, and Netanyahu told these leaders that Obama is asking nothing of the Palestinians. George Mitchell, who is Obama's special envoy, said in an interview last January exactly what Obama's game plan is on the Middle East. It's the so-called Saudi Peace Initiative, also known as the Arab Peace Initiative, which basically calls for Israel to give up everything in return for nothing. Israel is required to, under this peace initiative, to agree to a quote, right of return for 4 million so-called Palestinians who've never lived in Israel, to go to Israel and entirely overrun the country. The Arab Peace Initiative, which is Obama's plan, which George Mitchell has stated is his plan, also calls for Israel to return to the 1967 borders, which would involve the displacement of hundreds of thousands of Israelis from their homes. As you may know, when Israel withdrew from Gaza, 10,000 Israelis lost their homes. 70% of those people are still living in trailer parks. Can you imagine the 600,000 people who are living over the so-called Green Line lose their homes? What a humanitarian disaster that would be in Israel. And yet that's the Arab Peace Initiative. That's what Obama wants. That's what Obama is pushing for. That's his game plan. We have to understand that, exactly what he's talking about. He's also talking about the establishment of a Palestinian state with Jerusalem as its capital. Jerusalem is not a Palestinian city. Back in 1880, 80% of Jerusalem's inhabitants were Jewish. When the Jordanians captured East Jerusalem in 1948, they destroyed over 50 synagogues, Jewish cemeteries, churches, and Jerusalem is mentioned 600 times in the Bible. It's mentioned 0 times in the Quran. My opponent, Ackerman, unfortunately, is on the Obama bandwagon. He even said that we should send more money to Abbas to make him Abbas into the Muslim Santa Claus so that Abbas can give out the goodies and then we will have peace in the Middle East. That completely misunderstands what Abbas is all about. Also in 2008, I also ran against Ackerman in 2008. At that time, I also served as the representative of the McCain campaign for debates in the Jewish community, the Obama versus McCain debates in synagogues. Ackerman came to the community and he said that Obama would be good for Jews in Israel. I said that he would not be good for Jews in Israel. Unfortunately, I was even more right than anybody would have thought. Let's now take a quick look at what Judaism says about dealing with tyrants and what we're dealing with today. Do you mind if I go over, especially since you've all a few minutes?
It's only if people are willing to stay.
Are people willing to stay for a few minutes? Okay. The Talmud says, those who are kind to the cruel in the end will be cruel to the kind. This was said because Saul refused to kill a king, committed to the genocide of the Jewish people, and then the king's descendants lived on to attack the Jewish people again. What this means is that Judaism, the root of Judaism, is that you must be uncompromising and rooting out terror. Judaism also has dealt with the question of when to act. If you look at the story of Purim, when Haman obtained a decree to wipe out the entire Jewish people, but the decree was not to go into effect immediately. There was a time lag. They drew lots to figure out when exactly that decree would go into effect and when the Jewish people would be destroyed. And since there seemed to be some time open, Esther wanted to wait for a while before approaching the king on behalf of the Jewish people. She would endanger herself if she approached the king. What she wanted to do was wait until the king told her. And Mordecai said, no, you have to act now, even if you endanger yourself, because you don't know if the decree will be moved up. You don't know if you'll be in a position to act later. You don't know what the circumstances will be later. I think that has a direct effect. I think the direct analogy for present times is Iran. We don't know exactly how long it is before Iran will survive. It could be a year, it could be tomorrow, it could be 4 years, but we have to act promptly. I turn a bit to the CISADA, which the Comprehensive Iran Sanctions Act, which our Senate candidate discussed. There was a major flaw with that. First of all, as John Bolton says, we've delayed and delayed and delayed on Iran beyond all belief. The only real viable options at this point are either military action or regime change. The sanctions bill was held up by Ackerman and at Obama's request and by other people in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, the Democrats, for over a year, and it's still too little too late. Ileana Ross-Lettman, who is the ranking Republican, wonderful congresswoman from Florida, made a statement on the day that the sanctions bill was finally passed about a month ago, and she said, unfortunately, this act contains a key element that could significantly undercut its effectiveness: multiple exceptions and waivers for the president and the executive branch. This means that by a stroke of a pen, substantive provisions can be transformed into mere recommendations. And if you go back to 1996, when the original Iran Sanctions Act was passed, there were also the same waivers. There were waivers in there also, and it was never enforced. And the 14 years since, it's never been enforced. They also have waivers in the current act, and unfortunately, AIPAC was not strong about making sure that those waivers come out of the act. Also, we know already where the administration is going on the Iran Sanctions Act. On June 25th, the day after the same day that the Comprehensive Sanctions Act was signed, Hillary Clinton stated, and I quote, that the administration is committed to a, quote, multilateral dual-track strategy of engagement and pressure, and will continue to work for diplomatic resolution. So we know exactly where this administration is going and how ineffective they want these sanctions to be.